The information to start your day with a smile or two, and on Wednesday mornings at this time, we're always smiling from ear to ear because it's time for us to say good morning to Nanny Bubby.
Good morning.
Well, you put up a thought-provoking topic on the Long Life Era Community Facebook group recently called the U curve of happiness. Now, is this U as in the letter U or Y-O-U?
It's right. So it's the letter U. So,
Okay.
upside down bell curve, if you will.
So what you're saying is there's like a very deep hole before I get to the other side, which is also a very steep climb.
Right. But the climb is a good one.
Yeah.
Right. The climb down, you don't see it coming. The climb up, you have to work for.
Well,
How about that?
I like it. Experts have studied the lifetime curve of happiness, something that would appear to be intangible. And what they're reporting is that happiness increases after middle age. How encouraging is this?
It is encouraging,
I think that's
right?
when the kids leave the house. That's when the happiness index goes up.
Hopefully, you've stockpiled a little bit of money around so you don't have
Yeah.
to work 50 hours a week kind of lifestyle. Is that what that's
Right, but
pertaining to?
I think that the truth is that after the crash of 2008, right, is that those that have an empty nest that they are living in are still working quite readily, and not necessarily because they have to, but because they have learned that it has continued to bring them purpose.
I'm reading from the Facebook page, the
Yes.
Facebook group, rather.
A lot of discussion, huh?
Yeah, a lot of reaction, definitely. And you can find this on Long Life Era Community Facebook group. And it says, in fact, between the ages of 40 and 50 years of age are the most stressful and the most unhappy. What is defined as middle age anymore? I thought it was 38 to 42. Is it 40 to 50?
Well, in this
I
study,
think the older we get, the further away middle age gets. That's sort of the way I worked it. I'm not even middle aged yet, and I'm 63.
Yeah,
so.
tailor it to your own needs.
Eventually
Okay.
I'm going to reach middle age.
well, I know people that are 58, 59, and turning 60 that still think that they're in middle age. I actually believed I was in middle age until I turned 70. I mean, honestly, I really did. But the study suggests that middle age really is factored between the ages of 40 and 50 or 40 and 55. So your young adulthood is, 18 or 21 to 50 or 55, and then, young life, 21 to 35 or 40, and then midlife, 40 to 55.
Okay.
But after age 50, according to the research, happiness begins to reach its peak and keeps growing throughout the rest of your life for however many years that is.
And it's interesting because I want to just quote this one thing to you, is that there's a doctor, Dr. Bob Waldinger, that states that the number one variable for understanding someone who is in their 80s and is happy, healthy, and still thriving is not because their cholesterol level is low or their level of stress is low or their heredity around their health is good. It's because of their social relationships and their activity. And that is the number one factor for happiness in those 80 and above.
How do you begin to actually measure it? Is it a questionnaire? Is it physiological? Can you measure happiness on any sort of
I think
metric
see
that is
it.
tangible?
I don't know if there's a scale, but you can see it. You see people, when we see Nanny Bubby, you can just tell by looking at her she's a happy person.
Sure.
And there are other people, when you look at them, you just automatically want to avoid them because you can tell by their body language, that's an energy vampire. That's somebody that's going to suck the life out of me, so that's somebody I want to avoid.
Right. Have you ever heard of Gretchen Rubin? She has a podcast called Happier, and she is doing a happier research, and she's written many books on the level of happiness and how people come to that and what creates happiness. And one of the last books she wrote was called The Five Senses of Happiness, and those five senses are something that if we key into them and we recognize which one of our senses we key into most. So some people, the sense of smell, when you smell aromas, it brings you back. I mean, this is why I, as a grandmother, Nanny Bubby, love to cook, is because I want to create aromas around my family that when I'm no longer here anymore, that it will bring memory back. So I have a really strong sense of smell, and my other sense is a good, strong sense of sight. But some of my unhappiness is brought around things that I hear or that I don't hear, because hearing is one of my lower senses. And I don't mean I'm hard of hearing, although my husband would say I am. But
selective hearing.
Yeah, but that's a weaker sense. And her concept is to key into those senses and find a way to take a walk and key into all 5 of your senses on that walk, and that in and of itself will bring you a form of happiness.
But isn't the challenge when it comes to happiness, because the challenge for everybody has a different definition of happiness and what makes them happy.
Right. Well, your happiness isn't my happiness,
Right,
and
exactly.
mine is not yours. But I think the idea of the U curve of happiness is to find that which makes you happy. And what they are stating is that in midlife, as you hit the bottom of that U, you have realized some form of midlife crisis. So either you lost a job, or you lost a business, or you lost a marriage, or God forbid you lost a child, or you begin to lose your parents. And those symptoms of occurrences during midlife can put you into a depression where you start to say, gee, when I was 17 and knew it all, and I said that I was going to do X, Y, and Z, be rich and famous by the time I was 29, and that did not happen, then you don't know what your next goal and purpose is, and that causes the depression and the very bottom part of the U.
And what is responsible for bringing you back up out of it onto the other side of the U curve?
There is a, I forgot the word for it, and I'm sorry, so I can't even answer that question. But there's
alcohol or something, but that's a different story.
Oh no, I did remember. So there's a Buddhist prayer in reading this that's called the Prayer of Temperance, and what that basically means, temperance, is that everything in life is temporary. Everything in life is temporary. So I think that this is why we send, I know this is why we send young people to war, because they think they're infallible and nothing can ever happen to them. So they march off to war without any belief that anything could ever happen. But as you get older, you really know everything does happen,
Sure.
and everything in life is temporary, and you are mortal, and you have little time left compared to what you once had, and therefore you start to live more present, more in the moment, and really the truth of happiness lies in the gratitude.
Right.
So the gratitude for the things that did happen and the gratitude for the things that didn't, that helped impact your life in more of a positive way than a negative way.
So the sort of Americanization of that, and I say this to myself constantly, is to enjoy what you have, and to with grace accept what is given to you. Mm-hmm. And that works for me all the time. To be grateful for whatever's about to happen, I think helps immensely.
Right. And how many do you know? I do know a person who has gone through this in their life and never came out of it. Lost a business that he felt was going to be his signature. His ego was embedded in it. He was going to make a fortune, and something went wrong, and he didn't. And he was never able to recover from that moment, and spent the next 40 years whining about how the world did him wrong, and never got back on his feet, and is really about to die a very miserable and sad life, rather than saying, okay, I tried and lost. Better to have loved and lost than to never have loved before. And the same with businesses. Better to have tried a business and lost, learned your lesson,
Yes.
and then picked yourself back up and gone for the next great inspiring idea and take the lesson to your best ability.
There's a fantastic book, just started reading a month or two ago, called The Obstacle is the Way. And it talks about that an obstacle can be viewed as a blessing, a learning opportunity. Also kind of goes into the old cliche, be careful what you wish for.
Aha.
So when you don't get what you want, or when you have this unexpected obstacle, you can be thankful actually for it, as weird as that sounds, because it gives you not only the temperance, the patience, the strength, the endurance,
Yeah.
to overcome that. If you don't ever have an obstacle in your way, you're smooth sailing, what basis for comparison do you have to struggles?
If you never have an obstacle or a failure or a rejection, you're not trying hard enough. Then you need to reset your goals, because
Right.
A similar book that I read years ago basically said, a setback is a setup for a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
So it all depends on your perspectives and how you accept the rejection and what you learn out of it, because we all learn more from our failures than we learn from our successes.
Said Jerry Tarkanian.
Yeah, well, I was a program director at 24, the youngest in this format, and I thought I knew everything.
Of course.
Because you think you do when you get your job at that young age, and but you learn more from your failures, the jobs that I lost, because I had to figure out what went wrong and how to correct that, than I learned from the jobs where I was successful.
And to all of those parents who are currently in their midlife and raising children, the worst thing you can do for those children is try to make their life right.
Yes.
Try to keep them from making mistakes and actually swooping in to protect them in a way in which they don't learn to have the pain, and therefore when they can't understand how to live through their pain and that they actually get through it, then they start numbing out
Yeah.
in their late teens, which can be very
Struggle is
dangerous.
part of the growth process.
It is. Struggle and disappointment is such the most important thing you can ever live through in your life.
Adding to that, consequences can be a better teacher than you could ever impart
I
through
agree.
your own experience.
Yes, I agree. And I like to pass that on.
I think we should leave it right on that note, because I think that's the message right there. Always good to see you, Nanny Bubby. You put a smile on our faces.
Thank you. I love being here. It makes me happy.
Website again?
Oh, yes. Well, nannybubby.com, but also Long Life Era Community Facebook group. Asked to join. And we've got some big things coming up, so I'll tell you about them in the weeks to come. Thanks for having me, guys.
Always a
you.
pleasure. Cool.